Hello everyone and welcome to the Alumni UBC Career Blog. My name is Michele Murphy and I'm your Alumni Career Educator. I have with me today professional presence and branding expert and UBC alumna, Katherine Lazaruk. We are here today to do something a little bit different with the blog. Yesterday, Katherine led an engaging and informative blog in our career webinar series about personal branding and professional success. And if you missed it, it's going to be available on our website next week, so you should definitely check it out then. But if you were one of the 170 UBC grads who registered for this event, I'm sure you learned a great deal. And I'm sure you recall that Katherine had such a wealth of information to share that we didn't get to really answer all of these amazing questions. There was so much engagement and so many questions being asked, and we just ran out of time in the Lunch and Learn. And so we thought, what do we do now? You know, maybe we should write a blog, maybe we should, how do we communicate this? And then we thought, hey, let's just do a video blog and bring Katherine back and have her address some of these questions that you had asked. And so that's what we're going to do today. So we looked over and there were so many great questions. We ended up consolidating some of the ones that were similar. So if they had the same theme or were the same question, we consolidated those together. And we also looked at, there was a number of questions that were answered directly in the webinar. So Katherine, should I share what those questions are?
Sure, I can. Yeah, it was the ones that if you're curious about the answers to these questions, so I can read them out. If you're curious about those ones, these are things that we did cover in the webinar. So one of the things was on core themes that can be applied generally for professional presence and success. How to create a strong personal brand, how to establish a personal brand, some of the basics kind of get started areas. We looked at brand and personal brand and professional brand at a very high level, so there's lots of things to dig into there. We also talked about, there was a good question on where do you draw the line between your public brand and your private life, and we did talk about that in the webinar as well. Also, creating a personal brand or recreating a personal brand following an extended career break of any kind, so whether you were caring for your family or you were traveling or took a sabbatical or whatever you were doing, like how do you do that? So all of those questions were about kind of how do I create a brand, what are the basics of that, and that content is in the webinar. So if that's something that you'd like to know, then by all means go ahead and access the webinar. Now, Michele, can people access the webinar if they didn't register? It's going to be on the website.
Yes, they can. If you're a UBC grad, you can absolutely access the webinar even if you were not registered for the original webinar. They're going to ask you for your most recent degree and your graduating year and your name and email, and it's just a simple registration form, so it's really easy to access that. Yeah, so you can watch it multiple times. It's a really great resource to have in our archive.
Okay, perfect. So those were the ones that were in the webinar. And then, do you want to take it back there, Michele, and talk about the categories that we talked about?
We grouped these things, taking the overall concept of personal branding and professional success. We grouped some questions into categories. So the process of doing this, how do you evaluate your brand? So questions that were about that. People who are interested in a new career, a new business, some sort of transition or career pivot. We had some questions that were grouped there, and then career transitions more specifically. And then strategies and tips. A lot of people were really looking for those concrete strategies and tips that we're gonna they could put into practice, action items that they could do right away. So we're going to go through each of these and really have it be an informal discussion format where we both kind of share some knowledge and information that might help you with these questions. And so yeah, and we would love throughout, as you're watching the blog, there's an opportunity for you to leave comments below. So we would love to have your feedback on that as well. So if there's any further questions that came up or your thoughts on the video blog, please let us know.
Yes, that would be great.
So we want to start with this. What is the most important question to ask ourselves about our personal brand?
Yeah. How's that working for you? Right? I think that's the most important question. Right? Are you getting the results that you want? And I know we did talk about that a little bit in the webinar as well. But the most important question, I think, is, yeah, what are the results you're currently getting? And are you happy with them? And also, the other thing I think that's super important about personal brand or professional brand is it's just another form of self-awareness. Right? So how aware are you of who you are, how you roll, how you're being perceived, what people are saying? Because we looked at some of the myths in the webinar about branding and control over people's perception and things like that. But in this particular case, I think the most important thing is it working? And also, does it feel real? Does it feel right? Like, I know the next question was, how authentic can one be in the personal branding process? And I think absolutely authentic. Like, you're not okay, sure, you can go ahead and put on a big suit and do whatever you want, but it's not going to, no one will believe you. Or they might believe you for a little while, but then if you don't have this credibility piece underneath that, it's not going to work out very well. So it doesn't help you in any way, shape, or form to lie about who you are, in any way, big or small, or, it's better to just be real all the time and okay, sure, there's degrees of things that you show and share with people that are in a professional realm, and degrees of things you share and show with people that are in your personal realm. But the authenticity, authentic gets thrown around a lot in terms of buzzword right now, but I think that you need to, where else are you going to go for personal brand? It is personal. It's about you. So the more you know about you and the more accurate it is, because that's one of the big things that I find a lot of the time is people will have a disconnect. They'll think that people perceive them one way, good or bad, and then they'll ask some questions. They'll find out. They'll do a 360 evaluation or one of those kinds of things, and then they'll find out the opposite. So sometimes we're really hard on ourselves, and it's people think, oh well, people will think I'm a fool, or people will think I'm dumb, or people will think I'm whatever, not qualified. And sure, I don't know, that might be true. However, you can also find out things like, people will think I'm weird. Actually, when they get to know you, they think you're kind of cool. So it can work both ways that way. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that it was interesting that so many people, there were a number of people who were fixated on how do I separate my personal from my professional, how authentic am I allowed to be? I think that there's a real resistance to the idea that we are authentic the whole way through, that there should be that thread of you through everything, that there isn't this separate personal persona you have and then your job persona as well, right?
Yeah.
That was just a common theme through the questions, I felt.
Yeah, the separation. I think it's interesting because I think that's really old school too. And it's also, we're in a different world now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? We're in a much more exposed world. So people that are hiding, like trying actively to change who they are, or actively be one face one way and one face the other, eventually that's going to come out on some level. Actually, as I think about that, it's interesting because I think we all have had experiences with those people that have a public face where they're all super amazing and nice and everyone thinks they're fantastic, and to their family or to the people that love them the most or the people that are closest to them, they're absolutely awful. Like, it's a Jekyll and Hyde flip kind of thing. And I think that kind of disconnection comes from this idea that things have to be separate, or this thing, a deep pain somewhere in that person, a deep wound of some kind where they feel they need to be that or do that or have that. And I'm always a little disappointed when I find things out like that, where it's, it's like, this is who I thought this person was, and they're not that. And we're all human. We all have foibles. We all, are different in different situations sometimes. My personal belief is that it's just best to figure out who you are and be that in all situations.
Yeah, and one of the things you said just now, and then also in the webinar, was around not using just your own perception as the barometer for your, and I think that this is true just from a career development perspective. That's where I see some of the limitations when people do a range of these career inventories and career surveys and career, you get typed as one thing or another thing. There's some value in that, but it's also really valuable to seek out tools that engage your relationships and ask you to say to somebody else, I've grouped myself this way, what would you say? Because honestly, we can't always see, we can't see our own blind spots. That's why they're blind spots. And I think if we want the full picture, it's really useful to engage people that know us well, and how do we appear and present ourselves to them. So I think that that's good in terms of our personal brand and personal image, and also in terms of even where we see ourselves career-wise, personality-wise, all of these aspects. It's good to include other people.
Yeah, I think it's also important to, you were saying that, do you want to take other people's perceptions into account? I think that that's true. And then there's also, I just had a thought. I'm sure it was really brilliant, and now I've lost it. Just about the idea of taking people's information back. Oh yes, you have to be willing to listen to what they say. And also, sometimes people really, it requires you to extend your hand such that it is safe for them to say something.
Yes.
Safe for them to say whatever they need to say to you, however they need to say it, and for you to be able to just sit with that and hear it and have that be okay. I remember I got challenged in my image consulting training by one of the teachers who was doing business, like talking about how to build your business and that kind of thing. Anyway, I was telling him how vibrant I was, and I just need to be out there all the time, and I need to be heard and listened to, and you know, like loud. I'm loud, right? And he said, "Okay, what is it about that? Why do you need to be that? Do you? Like, do you need to be loud all the time? What's underneath that?" And so that was a great question for me, because it made me really think, well, what is under that, and how is it really working for me, and is it pushing people away? Is it, you know, is that ability, like I have a unique ability of sort of seeing to the heart of things quite quickly and getting into people's undersides quite quickly. So people open up really quickly, which is great. However, I can also use that ability to poke the bear in really painful places, and that makes me an uncomfortable person to be around when I'm not monitoring my responsibility in terms of handling that particular gift. So it was just an interesting thing where he said that, and I was really confronted by it, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Need to take that on and really figure out what that is, and how to be big, how to be a big personality without scaring people.
Yeah.
Not being obnoxious or just annoying.
That comes back to the webinar, the aspect of, yes, you need to know who you are, but you also need to know what's being expected of you in your current role or industry. And I think that both of those things are really important. Like balancing and aligning those things is really important if you want that success.
Yeah,
and so
totally.
I just want to move through some of these questions, because that kind of comes through what we're talking about now, is like really fits into the next question. How do people evaluate that, right? Like, so how do they look at their existing presence and actually evaluate it and then improve upon it so that they can increase their professional visibility? That was someone of interest to a lot of people.
Yeah, and it's two separate questions, really. The evaluation piece is asking for feedback, again, because you can monitor your own internal reactions. Well, how did I feel in that interaction? How did I feel that came across? Or, you know, what do I think about who I am? But you have to ask for feedback. There's no other way to do it. Yeah. You have to listen to what other people are saying, and find out, if you can, what do people say about you when you're not around?
Yes.
Right? Because that's either conscious or unconscious. You know, some of the leaders that I work with have real blind spots in that area. Like they think, oh, I'm really good at this, and other people think they're a jerk. But they will never say, because they don't really want to hear that they're a jerk. They don't want to admit that they're a jerk, that we're all jerks sometimes. I've been a jerk, you've been a jerk, we've all been jerks, right? Well, part of the human experience. And sometimes it's intentional, and sometimes it's really unintentional, and it is what it is. So, yeah, so the evaluating part, really the only way to do it is to get outside feedback. And then who you ask for feedback from depends on what kind of feedback you want to get. So, for example, I remember one time, the first time I ever got a pair of glasses that I loved, like just loved them so much. And they were the first pair that I could wear. Like they were little round lenses, and they had this funny little thing on, like a wire frame on top with painted like red, blue. They were really cool. Anyway, I loved them. And I remember going home to visit my parents, and I get out of the car, and I was like waiting for somebody to notice. And I finally had to say to my mother, hey, do you notice anything different? And she goes, oh yeah, you got some ugly glasses. I was like, right. That's a bad, like that's not. And she never, she would never, ever, ever in a million years mean to say anything not productive. But it was just kind of a funny moment. I'm like, okay. Then. Where am I going to go for feedback? No, anyway, it was just really funny, those kinds of things. So you do have to be a little bit careful, protect your heart a little bit, when it comes to going for. That's why so many people come to see me, right? Because they come in my office and they sit down and they feel a little bit ashamed or embarrassed, or they're like, well, I can't figure this out. Everybody's got it figured out, but nobody has it figured out. Some people, everybody's on a continuum, right?
Yes.
Their journey, and things change a lot over time. So the evaluation piece is looking around outside you. So the improving piece is then you look at all the different areas that we talked about in the webinar. So you look at your walk the walk, which is your credibility piece. You look at the talk. Can I speak in an articulate way about who I am and what I do and what I stand for? Am I clear in my communication? Is the other person getting the message? And then look the part. So again, taking into account the social expectations, taking into account who I am as a person. Is my look, is my visual communicating that accurately? So if I say to people what I do, they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm an outlier. So that's sort of place you need to just go looking.
Yeah. So moving from the whole process and evaluation piece to the other categories, because some of our grads are really new grads, in their first couple of years, or they just graduated, and they're not really in that place of this is what I do. They haven't figured that out yet. And so when they're in that early stage of looking for multiple jobs, how do they create a professional brand when they're not quite, they haven't landed somewhere, or they're still sort of feeling things out, but they want to make that positive impression?
Well, I think that's a really exciting place to be in, because then you really get to go from individual expression. So you get to really start to dig in, and oh man, I wish I'd known then what I know now, honestly, about the digging in and how valuable the digging in part is, and really saying, who am I as a person, and how's that working for me? And then thinking about, okay, so if I haven't done a whole bunch of walk the walk stuff yet, like if I'm a student and I have this amount of experience and I've done these kinds of things, that's not nothing. Maybe you have a really unique ability about viewing situations from a certain perspective, or maybe you're really good at data, or maybe you're really good at managing relationships already, or maybe you're really good at math, I don't know. So thinking about whatever that is, and then thinking about taking the cues from your visual appearance. So in the webinar we touched on the idea of the look the part, and again, my personal belief is whatever container you're here in is the perfect container to do whatever you're meant to do on the planet. So the sooner you make friends with your container, the easier your life is going to roll. So when you're starting out, it's great. You can take cues from your visual and say, okay, do I at least look like me? Do I have things that match my line, shape, texture, design? Do I have things that match my coloring? Do I have things that fit me? Do I have things that express my personality and still keep me looking professional in the industry that I'm in? So looking at that, like even though you're applying for a wide range of jobs, you're not applying for everything. You're not applying for banking, and you're not and marketing, and like you're probably concentrating on an industry. So when you're looking for jobs in those industries, you want to think about, how does my visual gear towards that industry? How does my credibility, things that I've already done, gear towards that industry? And how does my language gear towards that industry? If I'm going into a startup tech company, my attitude and languaging and the things that I'm choosing to wear still need to match me, but they'll be slightly less formal. If I'm looking to get into one of the 5 big banks or an accounting company, I'm kind of going to need to look at my suiting, or I'm going to need to look at, a different sort of make different professional choices about what it is that I'm going to be putting on my body. So that's an important piece. Michele, I just noticed something on my little battery saver. Actually, my battery saver is low, so I'm just going to stop sharing my webcam for a minute. If you want to speak to the career transition piece, because of course that's your area of expertise, I'm just going to stop sharing my webcam and run over and grab my power cord.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm just going to leap ahead to some of the questions that came up around career transitions. People who were wanting to transition out of their current industry or advance in their current role. And I mean, and all of these are, of course, specific situations, and all of you had specific industries that you were going out of and into, so I'm not going to really speak specifically to industries, but I will speak to the idea that the most effective way to make career transitions is a series of career pivots. I think when we start to do this huge leap, when we think, okay, I'm going to go from here to here, and I make a big jump, that's less effective and much more stressful than taking smaller pivots towards where you want to go. And so thinking about, I always ask people to think outside of their job title. Get away from titles and start to think about skills. So what are the skills and the strengths and your personal brand, all the things that Catherine's talking about fit into this, like what are you bringing to the table? But also what are, instead of looking at your degree, what are the skills you learned and strengths you learned in your degree? Did you learn to be a critical thinker? Did you learn to work in groups? Did you gain project management skills? Did you, are you an excellent communicator? Did you have the opportunity to practice leadership? None of those things are specifically tied to an industry. However, most, if not all, industries require those skills. So there's a lot of ways for you to tell a story. So you need to think about where you're going. and you need to start telling the story of how you ought to be there, right? Like that, how that position works for you, how that role works for you. And then you have to look at roles that are going to be stepping stones to that. So whether that is taking on volunteer positions, engaging in information interviews, which is just, a 15 to 20 minute, coffee meeting with someone who's in the industry you want to break into, and just finding out what a day in the life is like, and what are some of the things about that industry's culture. Networking, you want to get into groups that are a wide range, okay? So if you go to Alumni UBC networking events, for example, you'd be dealing with alumni and meeting them from all career paths, and that's what you want. You want to engage with as many different kinds of people as you can, instead of going to in just industry-specific networking opportunities, although that's also quite useful, because if you're trying to move into an industry, start to get yourself seen and known in those industries. Networking is a huge part of that. So I would say the skills and the strategies you want to use, starting to tell a different story about your skills in your career, and doing that in your LinkedIn profile and your social branding and all these kinds of things. Learning as much as you can about the industry's culture that you want to move into, whether through information interviews, networking opportunities, volunteer positions, and then gradually building up your resume and making that pivot, instead of trying to say like, oh, I hate my job, I'm going to just leap to this completely different thing. And it's really, that's extremely stressful and probably won't give you the best chances at succeeding. So I think that step-by-step process, that like scaffolding process, is really what's going to be most effective.
I think too, the other thing, it's that really speaks to that question of how do you decode an industry's culture.
Right.
It's an observational piece, just all the stuff that you were saying. But I think the main thing that new grads forget is that you have so much time.
Yes.
Like, calm down.
It's true, but a lot of people making career transitions are not new grads, right? So they don't.
I'm sorry. Yeah, like when I'm thinking about the new people, like thinking about the time, but also when you're making a transition, transitions take time. So when I moved from the public school system and singing in the opera to ICU, to what I'm doing now, it took me 2 years. It took me 12 years in the public school system, especially towards the tail end of that. I probably spent maybe 2 years outside my work, really digging in and going, what kind of work do I want to do? What kind of person am I? And doing a lot of personal development, personal work to understand why I didn't feel like I fit in this area, even though I love teaching. I love teaching, but why don't I feel good here? What is it about this that isn't the right fit for me? What is it about the opera that isn't the right fit for me? So I spent a long time, even before I ever even thought I could make a transition, I spent a long time being unhappy, first of all. And then I spent a long time saying, okay, well, then what am I going to do about that? What action will I take? And digging in. So it took a couple of years, probably 3 or 4 years of sitting with that. And then when I made the transition, it was a little bit bumpy. Like, I came out and I went to a construction project management thing with someone I knew on a side deal from something else, and then went from there into corporate training. So it was this kind of rocky little adjustment. And then corporate training was great, and then it also didn't feel quite right. So it was sort of like, even in the process of this next scaffold piece, it still took me a little while to kind of figure it out. And even when I got into ICU, it's like, okay, I think I want to do this full time. Like, I was building my business part-time around the sides, but then even when I jumped into it full-time, that was the scariest thing I've ever done, I think. It was so scary.
Yeah, it takes
difficult, and it's still is so challenging every day. So, it takes time. Like, it's not. I think when people say, I'm just going to do something overnight, sometimes people can pivot really quickly just because that's how they roll. Most people that I know, and most of my client base and most of my experience, shows that people don't take one linear path. It's very, all over the place until you find the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it depends how different what you want to do is from what you're currently doing. I mean, if it's a sidestep, then that might be an easier. If you're moving up in a current company, I mean, these are just, but the complete life change. I think people just need to start seeing that as a process. And it's like that whole thing, well, it'll take me 5 years to get there. Well, what are you going to do in those 5 years?
Right. You have to do something.
Yeah.
So you got bills. So what are you going to do?
You might as well be at the bottom of a ladder you want to climb than the top one you don't want to be on. So I really feel that that just being in the process is really the best advice that I can give around that.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the same, I think, for checking out an industry's culture is just process, right? It's interesting with this sort of set of questions around new career, new business, or that kind of thing. A lot of the questions were around leveraging personal branding to build up a side business or build up a passion project. And really, in my experience, if you're starting your own business, you are the brand. Mm-hmm. You are the brand. So in order to enlist support, to persuade people to come with you, to follow your vision, to be excited about what it is that you're doing, it requires you to get serious, super serious about who you are and why you're out there, and to not confuse people by doing like 6 different things at once.
Okay, so here's my question. So if people like you are in like a full-time role and they're gradually, like you were in the past, I mean, and then they're gradually building up their business on the side, should their social branding and their personal branding and their LinkedIn and all these kinds of things be centered around their entrepreneurial project?
Well, it depends.
Yeah.
Right? It depends on what you're doing. So I'm just trying to think of because it's also, we're so exposed now, like it's really different. So when I started, that was even 10 years ago, and everything was, even now, like it's made these big advances, right? So now it's really exposed. And I think it's better so let's say, for example, you're looking for a different role to be employed, then LinkedIn is a great platform, and yes, things that are on LinkedIn should be consistent with your new direction. Unless there's some really, really good reason that you don't want to tell anybody that you're looking for other opportunities. Frankly, I think if you're unhappy in your current role, everybody else knows it anyway.
Right.
Oh. Yeah. So hiding it, excuse me, I'm crying in my throat. Hiding it isn't serving anybody. It would be far better to say to whoever you're working with, say, I'm noticing that this isn't really the right fit for me. Are there resources I can access here to help me understand that? And all of that comes back to the personal brand. How do I feel in my heart about what I'm doing here? Mm-hmm. And I found out for me that making a difference is a big thing for me. I really want to make a difference in people's lives and in the world. And the way that the system was doing it that I was in, I was like, yes, I'm making a difference. It doesn't feel like quite the right place. And then when I got into corporate training, it was very siloed, and that drove me crazy. So I learned that I really like cross-functional stuff. I don't necessarily want to be in one thing. Yes. I mean, I can do it, but I don't like it. So as people are going through, if you're watching this and you're thinking, how do I go through this transition? It's always look inside. Look inside is the first step, always. If you don't know what's going on in here with you, it's going to be really hard for you to get anything that's the right fit, or a relationship that's the right fit, or any kind of movement and direction in life if these pieces are misaligned.
So so that's really crucial. And so the question that was kind of asked, this brings me to, I want to jump to where people are asking how they can project that. So if they have that, doing that inner work, I think that's probably the first part of the answer to that question. The question was, how can I project confidence and positive body image at a networking event? That was a specific question. But I hear you talking about start inside first, doing that inner work, and then what other sort of strategies would you give to that person?
Breathe.
Breathe. Don't forget to breathe. Yeah.
Breathe. Feel your feet. Be in your body. Mm-hmm. Really actually get connected to what's going on below your neck. So many of us, we live in such a knowledge-based and information-based society that we spend so much time up in our head, we kind of forget, everything that's going on from the neck down. And so it creates this kind of light. Mental energy is like when you get someone who's all in their head, the mental energy stuff is very light. It's very, fast. It's sort of high up here. The people that seem the most confident, or the people that I've run across that are the most present people, are people that are really, they feel their body. It's not a separate thing. They're aware of what's going on. Mm-hmm. They know that they're breathing. They know that they're sitting there. They're just calming down. So if you don't have any kind of meditative practice, or you don't have any kind of way of accessing that, the first thing to do is just use your senses. Mm-hmm. So, for example, if you're in a meeting and you start to feel yourself, getting edgy or disconnected, or you don't feel confident, the first thing to do is to start feeling like, what are your hands doing? So, for example, let's say your hands are in your lap. What are they doing? Are your hands warm? Are they cold? Are they resting on your legs? Can you feel your legs underneath your hands? Is it soft? Do they feel firm? Do they feel, yeah, what is your sense doing? What do you smell in the place that you're in? What do you see in the place that you're in? And really focusing in on any one of your senses at any given time will give you a connection back to your body. And as you do that, you might notice some different things. So for example, I always notice that when I'm in my body, really connected and aware, my voice drops. My pitch of my voice tends to lower. So if I'm really chill, it's like way down here. Or if I'm really excited, I'm like, ah! You know?
Yeah, definitely.
So being confident, and now, of course, what we perceive as confidence and what we perceive as, well, positive body image is a little bit different. So confidence is something, I heard this great saying the other day, confidence is something that comes from doing something successfully over and over again. And the difference between confidence and courage is if you've never done it, you have to be willing to do it. You have to be willing to step out. You have to be willing to try things. And being open to trying things and admitting that you're new, especially going into a networking event where you're starting a business or something like that, say hi. Hi. Yeah. That's the first place to start. Make eye contact, shake someone's hand, smile. Be in your body, be present, be observational, join a conversation, watch people's body language. And positive body image, I think, comes from being okay, accepting whatever is. And there's a difference between, like, so there's the body positivity movement, and if you really don't like your body, that's a tough jump to make. Like, that's difficult to be like, I hate my body, I love my body. Like, that's a huge gap. But if someone's in that place where they're not feeling very positive about their body, or they're actively outright hating on it, which makes my heart break a little bit when I hear that, they're actively hating on it, even just catching those thoughts is the first place to go. Being aware of what it is that you're thinking about your body and what it's doing. And from there, the next step is, okay, all right, I accept that I'm actively hating on my body, and I'm now willing to maybe think about doing something different, doing a different thing. And from there, then it goes to, okay, I'm willing to accept that maybe there are some things that are okay about my body. And you probably maybe need some outside feedback for that, because sometimes people get really distorted views of the way their body looks or is, or, right? So we get these beauty blind spots where it's like you're so focused on what your nose looks like that you forget that people don't experience your nose. I mean, they do, but they experience it in your face, and they experience it as part of your energy. So they're not just experiencing one single thing about you, right? It's totality, and we sometimes get focused and we miss that. So getting that acceptance, and then gradually working your way over into really being rocking happy about the way that your body is. And it took me, let's see, so I first became aware of body stuff in my training, really, when I was, so what is that, like 10 years ago? Or no, because I started my business 10 years ago, but then I did my training sort of partway through. So 2009, 7 years, 6, 7, math. 8 years, because it's 2017, it's not 2016, right? Anyway, that's where I first realized, I was like, oh man, I thought I felt okay, but I really don't have a great relationship with my body. I don't love it, really. It doesn't love me. It's not working very well. So it's taken me that long to kind of get to the point now where I look in the mirror like, yeah, I feel good. Because I do. Yeah. And even when I gained a whole bunch of weight, like I was, 30 pounds heavier, 45 pounds heavier than I am now at my peak. And even then, it was like, okay, so I'm round right now. Okay, what is good about being round right now? It's like, okay, well, everything is really soft, so and cuddly, so that's good. I'm moving more slowly. It's forcing me to slow down because I can't move as quickly as I used to. So it can't, that was sort of where I had to go to, and then I just had to accept that was, I thought, well, if this is the way it is, then I need to dress this body, and if it changes, okay, and if it doesn't, okay. And then when a program came along that I was able to get into that was also equally gentle and step by step, then I was able to gradually lose a whole bunch of weight and feel really great and actually do that. But that wasn't really the goal. The goal was getting in right relationship with my body. So protecting body positivity comes from a place of figuring it out, working with it, with what it is, and then moving forward. And a lot of personal brand is about that. Yeah. So I think we've got a few more questions here. I'm watching the time.
Yeah, I think we should probably wrap it up soon. So I'm just going to maybe leap to the strategies and tips. So even if, because I feel like you actually did answer a few of the other questions just in that discussion. And so I think we could probably just address that question about strategies for that are not centered around being online. That was what someone wanted to know
Oh,
about.
yeah, right.
And
Right. Strategies for branding that aren't online. And then I also wanted to look at the branding myself as an expert or anything like that. That's a really walk the walk, and then being able to talk about what you know.
right.
So people, and then also authoring articles and getting out there and doing speaking engagements and doing
Yeah.
things like
Go to
that.
conferences,
That's
like
right.
and be engaged, I would say too. Like, I mean, build that question around is how do I brand myself as an expert in my field? And I think
Yeah.
it's, you know, making sure that your LinkedIn profile speaks to that you are reaching out and asking for professional recommendations from your LinkedIn network
Right.
around that specific role. And yes, authoring things, whether you're writing a blog or certainly if something that could be peer reviewed is
Yeah.
really helpful. And then there's always professional conferences and things that you could
Yeah.
be attending or presenting at, which would really help.
So it's always offering, like it's that offering mindset, which is personal brand anyway. What am I
Yes.
offering to the world? And
Yeah.
and does it make sense? There's the strategies and tips. There's one that I think we might have miscategorized just because it says how should you dress when everyone in your department wears jeans, sneakers, and activewear to work.
Right.
My feeling is if that's athleisure, which is really big in Vancouver particularly and in other places around the world, don't should on yourself, first of all. I think that it's important to, yes, consider your context. So maybe you don't want to wear a three-piece suit if everyone's wearing jeans, sneakers, and activewear. But if you really feel more comfortable in something that's tailored and you want to wear like a shirt and a pant combo instead of wearing jeans and sneakers, and if someone calls you on it, you say, no, I really feel comfortable this way. I think I work better when I wear what I like to wear.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? So try not to go too far out, become too formal when things are more casual. But maybe, so say for example, if someone's wearing athletic sneakers, like full on Nike, athletic sneakers, maybe you want to choose a Skechers that's a little bit cute, or maybe you want to choose, like a more casual loafer or something that's like the next step up. If someone's wearing Lululemons, it's like, or yoga pants, it's like, maybe I want to choose a pair of leggings that are not leggings, but like pull on tail. You can get pants that are more structured fabric that are pull on. And if you're a guy and you want to say, well, I don't really want to wear sweats to work, then try looking at fit of everything. Maybe you want to wear a really well-fitting pair of jeans and a cool hoodie and an interesting t-shirt. Maybe you want to add some jewelry to the mix or something that just levels it up just a little bit, makes it a bit more finished. And all of that has to come back also to who you are as well. So when everyone's super casual, you don't have to go too far to the other side, but you don't have to do what everybody else is doing either.
Yeah.
Okay, strategies and tips, not centered around being online. So strategies for building personal brand that are not centered around online is getting out and talking to people.
Mm-hmm.
Talking to people. Go out and say hi. Go out and meet people. Go out and go to meetups and go to networking events and go to Toastmasters and join business networking groups and join casual walking groups. One of my clients had this great fast walk group for, I don't know, I think she had it for a couple of years, where they would meet and they would go on a super fast walk. They were like the Vancouver fast walkers. Right, go do something like that. But if you want to build your personal brand and you don't necessarily want to have an online brand, maybe part of your personal brand is I'm not online. I'm like the ghost. You got to find me. I'm special.
Yeah.
That's part of your brand. So that's a piece of it as well.
And Alumni UBC has 3 networking events a year, at least, that are actually specific networking events that you can come to. And also just other events that we have. Like we have dialogues and talks and panel discussions and all kinds of things that always have a coffee and tea reception afterwards. Always have something where people are engaging and mingling and talking afterwards. So use those events as opportunities to meet people you already have something in common with. You're both graduates of UBC. That's at least a starting point for a conversation.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting with the not centered around being online too, because there are some people that still use, people that are in business that use collateral materials. So I have postcards. I have a little fold-out that I'll sometimes hand out that's got etiquette and dining tips on it, or it's got, it's just like a little bit of information that gets handed out as a card. Those kinds of things, you want to think about what your collateral material is going to be if that's a strategy that you're going to employ. If you're using direct mail or you're using those things, then that has to be in line with who you are as a person as well. What are some questions here? What are some tips to help me have positive personal encounters? And what does it take to be remembered and recommended to others? I guess it depends. It takes time to meet people. Like you don't just expect someone to meet you and think you're awesome and refer you to 6 people. That's a little crazy. It's a bit ambitious. Being remembered is helping people feel comfortable in your presence, why don't you ask some questions about all the other people in the room? A lot of times people will go to networking events and be like, why is no one talking to me? Maybe because you didn't talk to anybody. It's so easy to just walk up to somebody who looks lost and say, hey, you look lost. This is my first time too. Is this your first time? I'll be your friend.
And I always say to people, go in the mindset of what you can contribute.
That's right. What are you going to give?
What are you going to give? Who are the people you're going to introduce to one another? It is a process. You have to build relationships. You can't just attend one thing and think, okay, and now I should have a job. It's like, it's a real relationship building should be throughout your whole career. Even if you're in a job you already love, you should still be building relationships. But the networkers that people recommend to others are the ones that are master connectors. They connect people. They say, you should meet this person. And then you get this reputation for being, that whole go-giver, mentality.
Yeah.
Like instead of a go-getter, instead of someone who is like, what can I get? Because people don't respond to that. What they respond to is openness and contribution and a service-oriented, like, how can I contribute to this? And that actually, for me, as someone who is naturally an introvert, that's taken off a lot of the pressure and the anxiety of these things. If I can go with a spirit of service, it's kind of like, great, well, how can I help? Maybe there's someone here I can help. And that's like very like, lowers my anxiety, makes me feel more positive. Whereas if I'm in there to sell myself or get a deal or something, then I'm not really there.
Don't do that. Yeah, don't do that to yourself. And the other thing I think that's really great too is whenever I go to a networking event, I never intend to meet everybody.
Yeah.
I'm really happy if I meet one or two people and have a really great conversation. I'm super happy with that because I'm also a little bit introverted myself, where it's like I don't necessarily want to go out and bomb the room. I'm not interested in that. And the other thing that's interesting about the sharing mentality is there are people who are really closed, right? So you ask them a question and they'll flat out just say, well, I know how to do that, but I'm not sharing that information. And it's like, okay, because clearly they want to be paid for what they know, which is that's fine. That's their choice. And in my view, I always feel that that's a little bit off-putting. So when that same person says, gee, I wonder why nobody ever asked me out for drinks. I'm like, I wonder. That's interesting. That kind of thing is funny. So it's about actually genuinely wanting to be interested and connect with people and not putting a lot of pressure on having to say anything. Sometimes the encounter is really short. Hey, how's the coffee? Coffee's good. Good.
Great.
It doesn't have to be a novel. It doesn't have to be like a life-altering relationship. It's fine. Anyway, yeah. So if you're offline, it's all about developing your personal skills. So if you're also not very good at that, that's a great thing to start thinking about. How do I do small talk? You can Google anything you want.
Yeah.
So there's no excuse for lack of learning these days, in my view. It's like you can Google whatever you want, so go do it and get help. And then the last piece that we were talking about that was sort of here is online, how to share my brand on social media. And can an online presence work against you? Does having a website and hub for your CV or other info relevant to employers useful? Sure, you can have a website if you want, but you can also do a lot of that on LinkedIn. Recruiters will look for you. People will creep you online. When I meet somebody for the first time, if I'm having a meeting with them, I know who they are, but I try not to creep them too much online because I want to have a genuine first encounter with them, a first impression, and get to know them a little bit. Because I don't want to have made an impression already before I meet them. Just particularly because of my work, I need to be able to have access to that type of information. But sharing your brand on social media is sharing yourself on social media. And in an ideal world, you would be the same person online as you are offline, as you are at home, as you are at work. There is a consistency. Once you figure out who you are and how you want to roll, there's a real consistency to who you are all the way through all of those things. So on social media, you'll never catch me saying anything that I wouldn't say to somebody's face, that I wouldn't say in a conversation, that I wouldn't put online. I'd never put anything online that I wouldn't say. So sometimes my online and it also depends, like my Facebook is a little bit more informal and my LinkedIn is all directed towards leadership presence and development. My Instagram is all about outfits and tips and tricks because it's different. And my Twitter is, I cross-post on a lot of different channels and I'm a bit political. So I'll definitely, I am political. Okay, I'll just say it. Not a bit political, I am. Yeah. So I'll write word. So I will promote different things on my channels. And I really like to engage in conversation, particularly with people who have very different viewpoints. I like that a lot because it forces me to really listen, forces me to not just look for confirmation bias. It forces me out of that. So When you're looking at ways to share your brand on social media, talk about who you are, what you do, how you do it, the way you roll, things that you're thinking about. Hey, this is a great article that I read. So last night I went to see this great movie called I Am Not Your Negro, an amazing documentary based on the writings of James Baldwin, and it's following the three lives of Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., and Medgar Evers, and it's amazing, so on point. It's sad that it was, sort of in the 60s and 70s, and it's absolutely what's going on today still. So I talk about things like that. I'll share stuff on social justice. I'll talk about bias. I'll talk about all those things because I'm interested in breaking down my barriers, and so I want to engage with other people who are interested in doing the same and understanding where they're coming from. So sharing your brand on social media is about sharing who you are with the world. And yes, an online presence can absolutely work against you. If you are posting pictures of things that you don't want people to see or know about, or you're inflammatory, or you're deliberately trolling someone just to be a jerk, or you're wanting to stir the pot or whatever, of course your online presence, if your headshot is 10 years out of date, that will work against you. Right now, so what's happening for me right now in my business is that my website right now is disconnected a little bit from the shift that I'm taking in my branding, and I'm not ready yet. I haven't had the discussions in sufficient depth yet with my marketing director to determine the right direction to go in. So right now we're in the process of, okay, what can we do in the meantime that's going to bring everything a little bit more into alignment in order to take the next step forward? So my feeling is that it's working against me right now, because when people meet me and I talk about leadership presence development, and then they go to my website and they see that my website on the first page particularly is geared towards style and image consulting, so it's more about the look piece, there's a disconnect there. So they're like, yeah, I couldn't map what you said in this talk to your website, and I couldn't find that stuff on your website, and then now I'm talking to you. So I wouldn't come here to talk to you if I hadn't met you in person. Mm-hmm. Your website is not that. And my website's great for attracting people who Google image consultant Vancouver. It's great for that. But now it's like, okay, now I need to figure out how to change it. So I would say it's working against me a little bit right now. The brand needs to change. Definitely online presence can work for you or it can work against you. So try not to say things and put things up there that you're not proud to have up there.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that, so I'm getting from that too that the underlying piece is really about alignment, being in alignment.
Absolutely.
Across whatever the modalities are and whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, the more you can line it up. And actually it's interesting because the very last question was about someone said, I've already created a strong branding statement and guiding values to direct my brand. So I already know that. So I've already done the dig in. That's fantastic. So then if you're a person who's already done that, so you've done a 360, you've done a brand values exercise, you've done all that stuff, you've asked for outside feedback, you've got all that, and you know that your values are honesty, then you can start thinking about the nuance of that. So let's say your value is honesty. Is your honesty value in the way that you deliver the message, is it brutal? Are you a shock person? Or are you a really gentle person? Are you someone who's loving with your honesty? Are you a person who keeps your honesty, like you need to be honest, but you say, okay, I'm going to be honest with myself about the way I feel about the situation, but I don't necessarily need to share that with the other person right now? Mm-hmm. Or if I need to share it, why am I sharing it? Am I sharing it to make myself feel better, or am I sharing it because I think it's genuinely going to move the relationship forward? So you can dig in a little bit into the nuance of your values. And at this point, so if you've done that, then you want to look at, okay, how does my work history, how does my walk the walk stuff, how does my credibility line up with those values? Is it in alignment? Is it out of alignment? My talk the talk piece, can I tell the stories about what is important to me? You know, who I am as a person. Can I tell those stories verbally? Am I able to do that? Does it line up? And then the look the part piece is, do I look like a person who is X? Do I look like a person who is Y? So one of the things that my clients tell me is they say the reason that we come to you is you're very good at making people feel safe. Your space is safe. You feel like a safe person. You feel approachable. So then I always need to keep that in my mind. It's like I absolutely want to make people feel safe. If they're already going to open up, then I want to make sure that they are feeling okay with that. So I need to think about, you know, what I'm wearing. I like to have fun, so I need to look like a person who maybe is kind of fun. Those kinds of things. If I showed up in a three-piece navy suit and a white shirt with, you know, like really straight glasses and like everything really straight, then it would be harder for people to know that about me right off the start. So if you've already got the branding stuff down, then you need to move to the, can I tell the story and do I look the part? And as always, I'm absolutely happy to help anybody who wants to come and talk about this. If this is something you still feel like you have more questions, if you have some individual specificity that you want to dig into, the easiest way to reach me is just to email Katherine@icuimage.com or icuimage.com. Check out the website and click the Help Me. I have a Help Me button that Get Started. It's like, help me, and fill that in, and just come for coffee. It's 30 minutes. We sit down, have a chit chat, get to know each other, and get a sense of how things roll. And in that meeting, I talk about, you know, how we do what we do and how we get paid for what we do and what the range is and all of that kind of stuff, ballpark fees and things. So it's very low risk. It's easy to do. So if that's something that's interesting you and you're curious about it, then by all means, please feel free to get in touch, because we all need each other. We need help.
Yeah.
We can't do it alone. I certainly have not built my business alone. I've had lots and lots of mentors and lots of support and lots of consulting. I've paid a lot for consulting over the years to get help.
Yeah.
Try to do it by yourself. It's no fun.
No, and you don't have to, you know, and you can't, and we can't, and none of us can, and also we don't have to. So that's really the gift of this, and I think that's a really good way to wrap it up, because I think that brings us back kind of to Alumni UBC and our career development program, and I think that it's based around that idea that it's okay that you can't do it yourself. You know, that life after university can be a little bit daunting, and even if you're mid-career, or just a little, and if you're mid-career, late career, you know, making changes in our careers like that, this is like a huge part of our lives, you know, after we graduate, what happens. And so we aim to, like, the resources like this and all the resources we're creating are around just being a support system to you in that process. You know, so I would encourage you to really take advantage of all of those things. As we said before, the webinar that prompted this great discussion is going to be available, you know, next week, and you should check it out. You can watch it as many times as you like, and take notes and all that kind of good stuff. And I suggest really strongly that you take Katherine up on her offer to go and meet with her, because this is a huge piece. You know, I think this is what's going to really, like, this really sets us apart, you know, having the support in this area. And it's not just our skills, and it's really our career has so many other dynamics and elements to it. Our communication has so many different dynamics and elements. So, you know, if you are that person who asks the question around, I already know my brand, I already know, then I would say, well, what do you need help with now? You know, now that you know all of those things, what are the things you need help with in reaching out for that support? Because none of us know everything. You know, that's why.
What? We don't? Are you kidding?
I've often thought that I did, but we don't. And so I think we all need help, and we work better together. So thank you, Katherine, for being with us again. I think that this is an amazing resource of content for our grads. And thank you for being here to mentor your fellow grads. And I look forward to, you know, partnerships and collaborations in the future.
Yeah, I think this could be the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Okay, bye for now. And everybody out there, please leave your comments below. We'd love to hear your feedback. Thanks.